Waking up early changed her routine. The alarm pierces the pre-dawn stillness, a digital shriek at 4:30 a.m. For Sarah, this sound used to be a declaration of war, the start of a frantic battle against the clock. Snooze. 10 more minutes. Snooze again. A chaotic rush would follow, a blur of frantic dressing, a gulped coffee, and a sprint out the door, already feeling behind before the day had even truly begun. Her mornings were a testament to reactive living, a constant state of catching up. She was a passenger in her own life, carried along by the relentless current of obligations and deadlines. The quiet moments for herself were a forgotten luxury, squeezed out by the pressure to perform, to produce, to simply keep up. This wasn't a sustainable way to live, and she knew it. The constant stress was a low-grade hum beneath the surface of everything, coloring her interactions, dulling her creativity, and chipping away at her well-being. The frustration was a familiar ache, a sense that she was capable of more, but was trapped in a cycle of her own making. She longed for a sense of control, a feeling of proactive ownership over her time and her energy. The idea of a calm, intentional start to the day felt like a distant, unattainable dream, something reserved for the hyper-organized gurus she saw online. But a seed of desperation had been planted. Something had to change, and she suspected the change had to start with the very first decision she made each day. The decision of when to wake up. The first morning was brutal. Every cell in her body screamed for the warmth and comfort of her bed. The cold floorboards felt like a shock to her system. The house was dark, silent, and felt unnervingly empty. She stumbled to the kitchen, her mind foggy, and questioned her sanity. Why was she putting herself through this? What difference could a couple of extra hours possibly make? She brewed a cup of tea, the simple ritual, a small anchor in the disorienting quiet. As she sat at her kitchen table, watching the first faint whispers of light paint the eastern sky, a strange and unfamiliar feeling began to settle over her. A feeling of peace. There were no emails demanding her attention, no notifications buzzing for a response, no one else awake to make demands on her time. It was just her, her thoughts, and the slow, steady arrival of a new day. This was her time, and hers alone. She didn't have a grand plan at first. The initial goal was simply to exist in this quiet space. Some mornings she would just sit, sipping her tea, and watching the world wake up outside her window. Other mornings she would pick up a book she'd been meaning to read for months, a novel that had gathered dust on her nightstand. She read a chapter, then two, absorbed in a world of fiction without the usual guilt that she should be doing something more productive. She discovered the simple joy of reading for pleasure, a habit she had lost somewhere in the transition to adulthood. This small act of reclaiming a forgotten passion felt like a quiet rebellion against the tyranny of the urgent. It was a small, personal victory, but it was a victory nonetheless, one in the silent hours before the world awoke. Small habits created big results. That initial, simple act of waking up and sitting in the quiet began to ripple outwards, transforming the landscape of her entire day. The morning peace was addictive. It created a buffer, a protective space between the tranquility of sleep and the demands of the day. Sarah found she no longer craved the frantic energy of her old routine. Instead, she began to build upon her new foundation of stillness. The quiet time evolved. After a few weeks of just reading, she decided to try meditating. She downloaded an app, and for just 5 minutes each morning, she sat in silence, focusing on her breath. At first, her mind was a whirlwind of to-do lists and anxieties, but slowly, day by day, she learned to gently guide her focus back to the present moment. Those 5 minutes of mindfulness became a crucial anchor, teaching her to observe her thoughts without being consumed by them. This newfound mental clarity began to bleed into the rest of her life. She started her workday not with a gasp of panic, but with a sense of calm focus. The problems and pressures that once felt overwhelming now seemed more manageable. She had the mental space to approach challenges with strategy and patience, instead of pure reaction. The morning quiet had given her a precious gift: perspective. She started to notice the quality of her work improving. Ideas flowed more freely, and she found creative solutions to problems that had previously stumped her. Her colleagues noticed a change, commenting on her newfound composure and thoughtful contributions in meetings. She was no longer just reacting to the demands of her job. She was proactively shaping her professional path. The positive changes weren't confined to her professional life. Feeling more centered and energetic, Sarah decided to incorporate gentle movement into her morning ritual. She started with simple stretches, feeling her body awaken alongside her mind. This soon evolved into a short yoga practice, following a video in her living room as the sun streamed through the windows. The physical act of stretching and strengthening her body was invigorating. It released endorphins, boosted her mood, and left her feeling physically capable and alive. This new physical energy carried her through the day, replacing the familiar afternoon slump with sustained vitality. She found she had more patience with her family in the evenings, more energy to engage with her friends, and more enthusiasm for her hobbies. Her life started to feel richer, more vibrant, and more aligned with the person she wanted to be. The small, incremental habits, waking up, reading, meditating, moving, were compounding. They were building on each other, creating a powerful upward spiral of positive change that was resculpting her entire existence from the inside out. Success begins with discipline. The transformation wasn't magical. It was methodical. It was built not on fleeting bursts of motivation, but on the unglamorous, day-in, day-out practice of discipline. There were countless mornings when the warmth of her bed felt like an irresistible siren's call. Mornings when she was tired, or stressed, or simply didn't feel like it. These were the moments that defined her journey. Discipline wasn't about feeling motivated every single day. It was about honoring the commitment she had made to herself, even and especially when she didn't want to. It was about choosing her long-term well-being over short-term comfort. It was the conscious decision to push past the initial resistance, knowing that the reward on the other side, the peace, the clarity, the energy, was worth the momentary struggle. This daily act of choosing discipline over impulse became the cornerstone of her newfound success. It taught her a profound lesson. True freedom is in the absence of structure, but the mastery of it. By imposing the discipline of an early morning routine, she had liberated herself from the chaos and reactivity that had previously governed her life. She was no longer a victim of her circumstances. She was the architect of her days. This principle of discipline began to extend to other areas of her life. She applied it to her finances, creating a budget and sticking to it. She applied it to her health, making more conscious choices about her nutrition. She applied it to her relationships, making a disciplined effort to be more present and engaged with the people she loved. Sarah learned that discipline is not about punishment or restriction. It is the ultimate form of self-respect. It is the act of showing up for yourself, for your goals, and for the life you envision day after day. It is the engine that turns intentions into reality. Her success, the promotions at work, the deeper connections with loved ones, the profound sense of inner peace, was not an accident. It was the direct and inevitable outcome of 1,000 small, disciplined choices, starting with the simple, resolute decision to conquer the snooze button and claim the dawn as her own. The morning habit had taught her that the path to an extraordinary life is paved not with grand gestures, but with the steady, consistent, and disciplined steps taken in the quiet hours when no one else is watching.